stage. Thank you.
Chambers, welcome to OGO. Go ahead, please, sir, for 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Appreciate you being here with your colleagues, Ms. Giswald and Ms. Vanderwees. I'd like to talk about everybody's favorite tax, the underused housing tax. Mr. Giroux, I'm not sure you are able to follow all of the inquiries of ministry, but just last week, the government tabled documents that showed since 2022, the federal government has spent upwards of $59 million on administering the underused housing tax.
Sorry, Mr. Chambers, I have to interrupt for a second. We're being told your microphone's not connected properly to your computer.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I believe that's likely a little bit better.
Yeah, we're fine now. Go ahead, sir.
My apologies to the interpreters. Mr. Giroux, we were told by the CRA that they've spent upwards of $59 million administering the tax, but have only assessed $49 million worth of amounts owing. That's not collections, by the way, that's amounts owing. I'm just curious if you recall from your previous work, do you recall what the government expected to collect from that tax in the first couple years?
You're right, Mr. Chambers, that with a team of 38, we cannot follow every single government initiatives. I don't remember off the top of my head how much the government was expected to collect on the underused housing tax. And I'm looking at my colleagues and they're avoiding eye contact. So it probably means they don't remember either. But it seems to be high to have numbers such as the ones you mentioned, that it would be costing so much to administer versus how much is assessed, which is often a significantly different number than what ends up being collected.
Thank you very much. My understanding is they expected to collect $200 million in the first year and about $165 million every year thereafter. If that is the case, and their experience is that they're only assessing $49 million worth of penalties, should the government take what effectively would be a write-down in that to adjust what it's projected to assess and collect for future years, since it's not bringing in what they believe?
If the amounts assessed so far are indeed the final numbers or are indicative of what the government is expected to collect overall, I think there'll need to be a correction in the budget in terms of revenues to be collected. So if that's indeed the case, and it's not just the initial collection efforts that have had some difficult times getting underway, then we should see that reflected in the fiscal plan when the minister tables the budget in April, on April 16.
Thank you very much. Do you believe that it's appropriate, or should the CRA, when implementing a new tax like this, consider the costs of compliance on taxpayers with respect to the amount of direction or clarification that they provide taxpayers? Is that something they should be considering? There was an article yesterday that suggested that taxpayers are paying anywhere between $500 and $1,000 or more per filing of the underused housing tax paperwork, which they have to do every year.
It certainly would be a good idea in terms of policy making for the CRA to introduce that into the equation when I say CRA, but CRA and the Department of Finance, when they're briefing the minister or ministers and cabinet, ultimately to introduce new tax measures, to have an idea, or at least provide an idea to the ministers as to how much the burden will be on individuals and businesses. And also, I know they do that. They probably also include the number of employees they'll need to administer these new taxes or amended tax provisions. So it's data that would certainly be, it would certainly be possible to have at least an order of magnitude when introducing new measures such as the underused housing tax.
Thank you very much. Last question. I want to thank you very much for the work you've done on tracking departmental spending plans and the impacts on the government's people plan. The government continues to send legislation to this parliament with no projections on the impact on people, and yet your office is the only office that shows consistently time after time the government suggests a people projection and fails to meet it every single time. In fact, the numbers go up every year instead of down as they project. How do you recommend parliamentarians get a better handle on or require more transparency for the government on its people plan?
A brief answer if you're able to.
Yeah, having more clarity as to exactly how many employees initiatives will require for their proper administration would be a good first step. And also the employee impact of reallocation measures would certainly be a good impact. But I'll stop there for lack of time. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Mr. Drouin, please, for